being with us. There's so many stories right now going viral, some of which we've been covering for years, some of which we've just started to cover, ranging from Jimmy Savile to Johnny Depp. If you're not familiar with Attwood Unleashed, let me just give you a little bit more about it. So every week at 6 p.m. on Wednesday, we have a 4-hour live stream. Usually first 2 hours are on YouTube, second 2 hours are on Patreon. It is co-hosted by Andrew, who's with me right here. And we have an eclectic mix of guests. So going over tonight's rundown, we're going to start out with David Sadtler, who's joining us just after 6, who's written a book. In particular, it's called The Folly of Deference, What Jimmy Savile, Irish Priests, Drunken Doctors and Incompetent Monarchs All Had in Common. So he's got a lot to share about Savile and the factors that contributed to him getting away with everything for so long, which we're going to get into. After Sadtler, we are perhaps going to be talking more about the Johnny Depp case. I just was watching that briefly. There's like 100,000 watching it live right now on one of the channels on YouTube. So it's absolutely massive worldwide. It's fascinating.
Is it happening right now?
Yeah, it's right now. There's a channel. It's broadcasting. It's got like over 100,000 on the live. Yeah, but
don't tell people about that
channel. Stay here, peeps. Then we've got the final guest on the YouTube section is Darren Jeffrey. If you've not seen his podcast, I did with him a couple of years ago. It's been titled Let Down by Social Services, which is an understatement. It was absolutely horrific what he went through at the hands of school teachers, therapists, social services. And that podcast is in the True Crime Podcast playlist. But he's going to be joining us to give us an update on his health. Because of the abuse he suffered, he's got damage to his posterior and other. He basically requires multiple operations to cure the injuries he's received from years of abuse at the hands of the social services. And he's going to be doing a bike ride. And John Wedger is supporting him with this. And both absolutely great guys fighting this front line, exposing what's going on in these heinous things. So then we're moving over to Patreon. First guest on Patreon, Colin Wallace. Back to the Kincora Boys Home. If you didn't see the interview we did with Richard Kerr, it's on our Rumble channel due to the graphic nature of the content. But we're going to be going deeper into Kincora with Colin Wallace today. He was in the Army PsyOps unit in Northern Ireland during the 1970s. He's going to be discussing how he became aware of Kincora Boys Home, why it was of interest to the Army. Additionally, he's going to go over the conflicts within the security forces which inhibited action being taken on abuses at Kincora, the past inquiries into Kincora, and why Parliament's cover-ups have still not been addressed. And then Andrew's going to be interviewing Timothy Frye.
Hello, everyone, by the way. Nice to see you all tonight. And for the audio people as well. Political scientist and author Timothy Frye will be on the show for the first time discussing his book, Weak Strongman, The Limits of Power in Putin's Russia. Really pertinent, really topical right now. Really excited to get into that. I was talking before about the fog of war. We don't really know what's going on during a war. It's only when sort of the dust settles in the decades that follow that we start to really get a good sense of what is happening. But Timothy Frye will give us something of an idea of what Russia's like right now, what's going on and what Putin is up to. The book aims to look past Putin and examine how today's Russia really works, especially in the middle of the war with Ukraine. So,
yeah, we had a fascinating interview with John Sweeney, and we're trying to get him on to do a debate when he gets back. So hopefully we will proceed with that.
Yep.
So the headlines then, the key points, so just to bring you up to date on the Johnny Depp situation. He's giving evidence in a $50 million US libel case against his ex-wife, Amber Heard. Johnny Depp says he was the victim of domestic abuse at the hands of Heard, not the other way around. Heard stood screaming in a nightgown in a car park, he claimed. He is suing his ex-wife over a domestic abuse column she wrote for the Washington Post in 2018. And Heard is countersuing him for $100 million. Good grief. So one thing is for sure in situations like this is that the lawyers are going to make a hell of a lot of money. Now, this morning I was watching Johnny's testimony, and my heart was going out when I was hearing this story of abuse at the hands of his mother. And I contacted Andrew, and he's like, "Man up, man up! Don't you see this guy's the best actor in the world?" So, what's your theory? What's your theory on what's going on here, Andrew?
I shall extrapolate on my theory, and I would just say I'm not. It's not like I'm going on Team Heard against Depp or anything. He could well be right, but I was really interested watching that you got so much money at stake. And the first few minutes I was watching, I thought, I wonder if. He's just talking from the heart here. And then I thought, well, of course no one is in these. When there's that much money at stake, they are rehearsed and rehearsed and rehearsed. And they happen to be actors, both of them. So not only will they'll be rehearsing even more than people with lots of money in these cases would normally have been doing. So this will be scripts, right? Every single word must be important. And when you watch it again with that in mind, things do start to pop out. So one of the things that Johnny Depp was pushing a lot was about how Amber Heard knew everything. And it seems to be very, very much irrelevant to the whole story, but it was that when he started with Amber, he was very impressed that she knew everything about blues music from like decades before she was even born. And I think what he's trying to build here is a picture of a potential psychopath in Amber Heard, because it makes it look like she wanted to impress him, and so she's gone and learned loads of information about all his favourite things in a way that's probably beyond what you might expect of a neurotypical person. So firstly, he's sort of building up this psychopathic thing. There was, of course, also that story of how she made him, it was quite pleasant that he could sit down and she was like, "Let me take your shoes off for you."
Yeah, let's go over that a bit more slowly, because they asked him about any warning signs, didn't they? And he said there was something that occurred that made him suspect. And in the beginning, it was nice, he'd come home, he'd be offered a glass of wine, and he'd sit down and she'd take his boots off. And he'd never, ever been treated like that before in his life. So he's thinking, wow, this is amazing. But then what happened? I came home one night and she was on the phone with somebody. So he thought, right, what do I do in this situation? Do I just leave the boots on or take them off myself? I'll take them off myself. And then after she'd done whatever she was doing, allegedly she came in and said, what was he said? Ding, 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 ding. What did she say?
I can't remember what she said exactly, but we've all been in that position when
what
you get home.
What have you just done? The boots! Where are the boots?
We've all been in that situation, mate. You want to take your shoes off, and you're thinking, "Oh, the girlfriend's on the phone, and I want her to take my shoes off for me, and she's not doing it, and I'm going to have to take my shoes off first." We've all been in that position. Also, I don't
feet were festering. Sweat was just permeating through his socks. He had to get those shoes off. But then she comes running, charges in the room. What are you doing?
What are you doing? That's it. That's my American accent. She had a go at him. She's going, you took your shoes off without my permission. You did all this, and it was also like you'd gone to bed without, or you didn't. You stayed up. You weren't going to bed at the right time. All this stuff. So, and that I do think that stems from that bit he set up of like she knew all the music I liked. It's all part of sort of a controlling psychopathic analysis. Do you think?
So you think that is a false narrative then, that Johnny Depp is playing to the worldwide audience right now to establish that he is the good guy in all this?
Yeah, I mean, look, they will both be doing that. Every word, I mean, language is manipulation. I had a linguist on my podcast, and I said to her, "What is language? What do we use language for?" And she said it is manipulation. That's what language is. Every word you say is to tell a story about yourself, and it's to manipulate somebody else to believe a certain thing about you. It's impression management. So everything that we say to each other is impression management to an extent. And so in a place like that, the eyes of the world are on them. So they are, of course, he's the good guy. And then I had my other theory about the reason they talk a lot about Depp's abusive mother. And again, my first reaction was like, this is a strange thing to do, because you don't want to imply there was abuse when he was younger, because then we might be more likely to believe Amber Heard that Johnny has replicated that abuse. And then I thought about it a little deeper, and every psychologist, you know, the most simple Psychology 101 will tell you that you typically try to replicate your parents' dynamic. That's why it was important that it was his mother, not his father, who was abusive. His father was seen as weak in that situation. So again, it's to imply to us that Johnny, again, has replicated his father's position. He's found another woman who is abusive and strong and potentially hitting him rather than the other way around. And that is the crux of the lawsuit. It's what it's about. It's him saying, I'm not abusive. What do you think of that, Sean?
So I think that there are a number of different theories being bandied about the internet. These are all allegations being made against each other by both parties. And, you know, do birds of a feather flock together? And they're both possibly diabolical schemers. There was a lot of drugs as well involved in the mix, wasn't there? So, you know, he's in court right now. He's sober. He's speaking very slowly and clearly, and he's getting the world's sympathy to an extent, other than, you know, with the more skeptical people, such as yourself, Andrew. So he's doing what he's doing right now. But when he was on drugs, was he a completely different person? She's probably going to do the same thing, you know. She's putting on this face right now in court, her innocent face. But when she was on drugs, was she a completely different person? Because when people do drugs, anything can happen, can't it? People can take drugs, they wake up the next day, they don't even know what they've done.
Yeah. Well, you tell me, Sean.
He's saying that you just don't want to admit to any felonies on the live stream.
No, I think you can admit it, can't you? I mean, he was sat there in court banging on about all the stuff he's put up his nose, you know. So of course,
I heard him talking about the lines of cocaine he did with Amber Heard's sister. What else did he say about his drug use? Well,
it was that. I mean, he's sitting there just admitting in public, I'm sitting there, you know, snorting up stuff. You can do that. The police aren't going to come in and retrospectively arrest him because they'll just say, I don't know. It's a weird one, isn't it? Because the reason that can't happen, I think, if you admit to having taken drugs or whatever when it's illegal, is if they then say, the police come, you go, no, I didn't really mean it. I was joking. But he's sort of, is he not bound by law to tell the truth because he's in court?
Yes, because it is perjury. So if he lies in court, then he is guilty of perjury. Do you remember Jeffrey Archer's perjury case? He ended up banged up in the UK. So, for example, her sister could get on the stand and testify that she had done cocaine with him and show that he had committed perjury, and he would be liable possibly for criminal charges. So he's got to tell the truth. He's got to tell the truth.
Yeah. It seems odd for him to be pushing that and to be... I find the whole thing, and I guess we're going to have some time, I think, later on, because I think there's a bit of time we're going to chat later about all this. So I don't know how far you want to go into it right now, but I am fascinated by the whole spectacle, because in the UK you wouldn't even be allowed cameras inside. I find it really odd that not only are there cameras on inside, but this whole thing about their private lives is broadcast to the world. Why? What's the reason for that?
I don't know, but it's fascinating, isn't it?
Yes, it is. Can't take my eyes off it.
When they asked him how they had met through the how he'd found the manuscript, Hunter Thompson's manuscript, and then he was progressing with the movie, and Hunter Thompson committed suicide, and I just find it a fascinating story.
Yeah. The world can't take their eyes off it right now. But I mean, there was that bit a while ago with that British actor. I can't remember his name. He was in Wimbledon and the Da Vinci Code and a few things like that. And because he had written, do you remember he'd written a text saying something like "burn the witch" about Amber to Johnny Depp, and then that got read out, and I just thought, this guy's not even involved in the marriage, and his private messages, which it was horrible, it was a horrible thing to say, but I mean, I write about 10 horrible messages a day to friends. I wouldn't want them read out to the entire world because one of my friends is getting a divorce. Do you know what I mean? That can't be right with privacy. Well,
this is what happens when you go to court, especially in a defamation case. Everything is going to be completely examined. Yeah. So, he's knowingly gone into this knowing everything would come up. And with his acting skills, he's, come up with the best strategy possible to convince people that it was her committing the acts and not him. So time will tell. What's determined in this case. Time will tell.
Yeah.
So nobody. I just want to remind the public, nobody's been convicted here. These are all just allegations, and this is just a documentary, educational discussion of them.
Yeah. Good reminding. Good. So we don't end up there.
and it looks like
if it pleases the court, we'd like to bring Sean Attwood out to talk about Johnny Depp. Go on, sorry, mate.
It looks like our Savile guest has just joined the stream. So are you coming back, Andrew?
I will be back. What time am I back again? 7
You're coming back for the discussion around 7. We're going to continue our discussion around 7, aren't we?
It's going to be nice, man. I look forward to it. Have a lovely chat. Enjoy, and I'll speak to you soon, mate.
All right. Thanks, Andrew. Cheers.
Bye-bye.
All right. Let's bring David in. Oh, there he is. Hey, David. It's been a while. How are you doing?
Good, Sean. How about yourself? Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, fantastic. Can hear you absolutely fine. So, huge thank you for joining us this evening.
Okay.
For the viewers that are not familiar with your work, David, could you just tell them a little bit about you and your books?
Okay, well, Sean, as you know, I'm professionally, I've been a managing consultant, I've been a teacher and corporate life type guy working in finance and strategy and all that kind of thing. So the only thing that does for me, it's a trade, really. The only thing that does for me is it makes me think a little bit about why things are, which is really how I got to thinking a lot about this subject. And writing books really about things that I noticed that weren't quite right. And one of the first issues that really occurred to me was this whole question about...
David, could I stop you 1 second? Ash has asked if you could perhaps adjust your camera so we could see your face better, because right now it's very large. There we go. Your face is better there. Yep. And,
Okay.
Let's get that. Let's get you square on the screen. You're a little bit off to the side. That's it. Come on. That's it. Stay right there. Yep. Keep going. Thank you. Yep.
How's that?
That's perfect. Yep. So just keep going.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Well, as I say, the issue that came up in my mind that was really intriguing as a kind of a hybrid American Englishman, I've been here 42 years, is the way in which deference plays such a large part of life in Britain. Of course, you're constantly aware of it with the monarchy, but one of the things I noticed right away was that nobody in this country that I ever saw in the early days with a necktie ever went to prison. It is sort of puzzling. Whereas, in America, you get caught cheating at taxes, you're in the slammer, but not here. So I kind of started looking into it a little bit and trying to understand what that was all about. So, of course, that led me not only to current day problems that we have, but to Jimmy Savile. Jimmy Savile is just a spectacular example of how deferring to somebody can lead to a lot of trouble, and it can really result in, as happened in his case, in terrible things, in broken lives. So
David, how did Jimmy Savile achieve that level of deference then from all sections of society?
Yeah, it is a bit of a mystery. I think he was a lot more talented and a lot brighter than he's given credit for being. Of course, he was entrepreneurial in the sense that he did a very good job getting himself set up as a radio personality and a TV personality, and he was a kind of a clever like a rat. He knew which tunnel to run in, and he quickly figured out what the game was of celebrity, getting support from prominent people. His peculiar and eccentric personality just seemed to work for him. So he really had the good sense to exploit that and develop these relationships. And he just seems to me to be a perfect example of how if you get yourself the right connections, this perhaps less so now, but with the right connections, you can get away with anything with impunity. If Jimmy had been starting now, I think it would have been a lot tougher because social media would have been all over him, the tabloids would have been all over him. People like my wife, who thought he was wonderful because he was a fell runner and wear walkers, she would have smelled a rat as well. But he was the right guy at the right time. He exploited his celebrity. He clearly was a smart chap and a talented person. So you have to admire. It's too bad it was for doing evil.
So do you think then that raising millions for some of the most needed people in the country, people with serious medical issues, hospitals, do you think that that was a cunning strategy that Savile employed to give him a shield against, his crimes being discovered?
Who knows? He fell into it, didn't he? I mean, he did start out as a pop music guy. And of course, with Jim Will Fix It, that put him in the role as being a great man of charity, a friend of the those who have no friends, who simply have a little wish in their lives to to have a happier life and all the rest of it. And what the step was, I never did quite figure out. From there to the 3 hospitals, he behaved so appallingly that I don't know. But I suspect he just kind of fell into it. He probably went to one of them. I don't recall, but I think he probably went one of them to be a kind of Jim Will Fix It guy for the patients. He was in that mode, and that seemed to work very well for him. And then he just milked it to a fairly well.
Yeah, because didn't his relationships with the hospital start with him volunteering as a porter?
Yeah. Of course, that would kind of make sense because he came from a working class, environment where people did menial work. So he probably felt comfortable in that milieu. But I think more likely he smelled access to a lot of people at that stage when he started doing that hospital stuff. We know he was already up to no good with young kids and everything. So he might have kind of spotted that as an opportunity. We'll never know because, of course, he died before he was caught. What was really going on in his head? Although amazingly, he kept giving us hints all the time, which I guess we chose to ignore. My case comes up on Thursday and all of that. I thought as a rogue he was brilliant. As a human being, he was absolutely beneath contempt.
So what about then his strategy of giving lunches to the cops? And in particular, if a complaint came in around the country, it would have to be called in to his local police. And that person was under, he had that person in a collaboration with him at these lunches. So the information coming in was lost about these complaints.
How brilliant is that? I mean, first of all, those cops were probably in his kind of social milieu anyway. They felt very comfortable around him, I'm sure. And of course, they were locals, and so he lived there, and so they had that kind of a common bond. I'm sure they told dirty jokes and one thing and another when they convened. So they had a kind of a community of lasciviousness, maybe to begin with. But again, like the cunning person he was, he immediately smelled the opportunity. Oh boy, these are the guys I want to befriend. If the trouble ever starts, I'll have allies on my side. I think it was just part of his great skill in doing what he did. But I'm sure if he didn't just fall into it, he probably planned that. he knew from his experience everywhere, really, in his life, that as soon as you see someone that has some kind of authority that can help you, you go for it. And he was a gregarious kind of guy. I mean, I was listening to this recent Theroux interview, and Theroux was admitting that he found him quite likable. He really he's ashamed to admit it. He says, but to be honest, I didn't mind talking to him. I sometimes enjoyed his company and so forth. So in his own way, he could be quite charming. So all of that worked well. He had a skill set that absolutely suited his kind of line of work.
What do you think about the role of the BBC in enabling his behaviour? There's a clip on YouTube where he's on top of the pops. He blatantly puts his hands up a lady's skirt and she jumps on top of the pops. And like you said, he was dropping hints left and right about what he was doing. Do you think that the BBC enabled his behaviour and covered things up because he was such a brand that they'd invested in? And, have they been held fully accountable for what's happened with Savile?
Well, for sure, what you just said is that they enabled the other way and all the rest of it. I, too, was astounded when I saw that clip. Good grief. Can you imagine getting away with something like that? So it shows you the gall, or as they would say in New York, the chutzpah of the chap, that he could do what he did. By the same token, they've never been called to account. They absolutely covered it up. He was a money-making brand for them. He was an audience builder, and of course they proved it. That at that Christmas show when they canceled the broadcast they were going to make about carefully researched about his bad behavior, and that was kind of the final straw, I think, in demonstrate not only their abdication responsibility, but their almost condonement of what he was up to, because they absolutely knew what the story was. I mean, all they had to do was watch that clip. So the answer to those questions that you just asked are yes, yes, yes. And of course, this being England, I told you about nobody in a necktie goes to jail. At least in those days, they never prosecuted those people either. And those people really were aiding and abetting an evil crime, and that's against the law. So how did we ever manage to excuse them? I don't know. I don't excuse them, and I don't think we should. I think we should dig them out of retirement and send them a writ.
So are some people untouchable then, David? Is it to the point where if your brand is so big, and I imagine that he was the biggest celebrity in the UK at one point in time, if your brand is that big and all these media entities have invested in you, that, if that's going to unravel, it has to be prevented at all costs because the amount of millions that will be lost. Is it a case of money and people's faces must be saved because those same people that helped him on the way up, they would be dragged down with him?
Well, certainly certainly the money is probably the biggest thing about it. But I suppose another thing happens too. Eventually, you get yourself in so deep in protecting a guy like this that you don't want to get rumbled. And for the BBC suddenly to say, "Oh, we've decided we've had this pedophile working for us for a long time, and we've decided, we can't put up with it any longer." Well, they're not going to say that. So in for a penny, in for a pound. I mean, I think they were almost trapped in their irresponsibility and their collusion. And I'm continually amazed and surprised at the way this thing is handled. So I think it was not only the money, it was not only the worry about having to admit that what you did for decades was ill-advised and wrong, but maybe just there might have even been some sympathy in certain quarters with what he was up to. Who knows?
So We have got a Savile documentary coming out at the beginning of next month, actually. And we've watched the Netflix documentary, and we're going in harder on the BBC, in
Right.
particular with the case of Claire Mcalpine. But first, could you tell us your thoughts on the Netflix documentary?
Well, to be honest, I was disappointed because it really just kind of recorded it in a pretty fairly thorough way. Told us the facts of his life, a couple of juicy things, a couple of juicy clips and so forth. But the real issue there is not all the things that happened. We know all that. I mean, how can you not? Having lived since his exposure over 10 years ago. What there should have been in there was a little bit of kind of forensic thinking. How did he get this way? Why wasn't he caught? What motivated the people that didn't rumble him? How did he ever manage to con all of us? In fact, there was one aspect that kind of troubled me in that documentary. They were saying, kind of by implication and sometimes more directly, well, it was all of our fault. We're all responsible because we were all taken in. We all thought he was a great guy and so forth. Well, I'm sorry, that just won't cut it, because I was not in a situation where I knew that the chapter that I was watching on television was actually having sex with children. And if it was, I would have been enraged. So that excuse is it's sly. It's a way of kind of passing the buck, and I thought that was inexcusable. But beyond that, it was fun. There was a lot of good clips in it, particularly when he's on camera, and giving, as he often did, those various kind of hints, of which there were many. I mean, just nonstop, which everybody chose to overlook. And at best, I think people like my wife and I, as we watch these things, at worst, maybe we said, "Oh, chap's a bit weird, isn't he? Wears peculiar clothes. There's something probably not quite right about him." Particularly when Louis Theroux did the interview with and the mother's closet and all that. When you saw that, you said, "What is it with this fellow?" I mean, there is something that is a bit off, not quite right about it. But that's about as far as it went. We had no idea. We had no idea of the terrible crime that he was committing. So I can't be included in that group that says we all share the guilt, we all share responsibility for knowing what was going on, for supporting him. Sure, we supported his celebrity. Some of us watched Jim will fix it and that kind of thing. But that's where it ended. So sorry. They could have done a better job of that.
Yeah, I think many people have tried to analyze the diabolical mind of Savile and his fixation with death. And in our research, he had, I think he fell out of his pram and he had an illness when he was a kid and he almost died himself. He was considered the miracle child of the family then when he did survive that. Then there was the volunteering as a porter with patients who were close to death. And then there was the preservation of his mother's outfits and him sitting with, didn't he sit with the corpse for a period of time after?
Yeah, that's what we got out of Louis, I think. Yeah. And why would anybody do that? I'm constantly amazed when I see crimes of aberrant behavior, usually sexually, but of peculiar behavior or other kinds, trying to put myself into the head of the person and saying, I can't understand what the attraction of this is. What do people see in it? And that's a very good example. Who in the world would, first of all, want to keep all the clothes of their mother in the closet for years and have them dry cleaned once a year? I think it was. I mean, what kind of craziness is that? So again, hyper weirdness, but bordering on maybe something not quite right there. It came through to a reasonable extent in the documentary, but Louis Theroux really helped us. Louis Theroux is quite embarrassed by his interviews with him, and he shouldn't be, because I think Louis Theroux is probably a genuinely nice, honest chap. He's without subterfuge, so far as I can see, without artifice. he is uninhibited about asking tough questions and so forth. And I think he did a great job. He did as much as anybody to reveal Jimmy Savile to us.
Yeah, and Louis gave a great explanation on a friend of mine's podcast in recent months, the True Geordie podcast, about the whole Savile episode. So, David, are you familiar with the case of Claire Mcalpine, which was left out of the Netflix Savile documentary?
I don't think so. I might be.
She was a top of the pops dancer who committed suicide at age 15. And she kept a diary of her interactions with a world-famous singer, a famous DJ, sex, drugs. Her mum found the diary and confronted the BBC. The BBC said she was making it all up, and she gave the diary to the Met Police, and the Met Police lost the diary. And we interviewed Kelly Gold, who was Claire's friend from back then, who was one of the top of the pops dancers. That's going to be in our Savile documentary that's coming out. But a real tragedy there that doesn't seem to get much attention in the media.
Do you know what this reminds me of? This reminds me a little bit of. I grew up in Boston, Massachusetts, and when the whole thing with the priest being rumbled in Boston came out, I was the son of a Lutheran minister growing up in Boston, so I was a bit of a freak myself. But when that came out, I felt sick, and I knew that if the same thing was going on there, that particularly went on in Ireland. That when you went home and told your parents what was going on, your parents told you to shut up and never speak of it again. And a lot of lives were ruined there. There were suicides, both in America and in Ireland, I know. So it's quite the same thing. It's the evil face of deference. People who exploit that to extreme ends, and somehow or other threaten their way out of it. And what a sad story that is. I had read about that now that you mention it, and I felt the same way. Just awful.
So I've asked the viewers to send in some questions for you, and Yahweh is wondering about our thoughts about Sue Hims, who is supposedly Savile's long-term intimate partner who never gets mentioned. Have you heard anything about Sue Hims?
I haven't. I would love to.
Yeah, so we're not familiar with Savile having a long-term partner. It just, he was bragging that he was a crumpet man, and he never, it was all one-night stands. And
why in the world would she tolerate all of that? Because if indeed she was a long-time partner, she must have known what he was up to.
Exactly.
Dear me.
So Anexus David has asked, how did David get interested in covering Savile in the first place?
Yeah, I got interested in it, as I mentioned at the outset of the program, when I started thinking about this whole business about how people get away with a lot when they're deferred to. So it didn't take very long in thinking about it and investigating people that to come to Jimmy Savile. In fact, I think the strapline of my book is something like The Folly of Deference, How European Monarchs, Irish Priests, Jimmy Savile, and Drunken Doctors can get away with a lot just by virtue of their position. And so I saw this as a kind of a gateway into quite a destructive social phenomenon. And so that's when I started digging into it a little bit more and reading about it, and then being just appalled by what I found, but confirming my worst fears that excessive deference is an evil thing. I mean, we've created this monster named Prince Andrew.
We're gonna have to. David. There's nothing been proven against Prince Andrew. We're under a ban. We're under a ban to talk about the royal family. So yeah, we're gonna have to change the subject there. Change the subject.
Right.
We got a question come in from Joey saying when Savile sat with his mother's corpse, what was he doing with her?
How in the world would I know? I mean, but why do you ask me that question? But it doesn't take a lot of imagination to think that there could have been something awful going on there. I mean, everything about his activities in this area is just inexplicable and inconceivable. So that wouldn't be almost, an inconceivable step too far. But how would we know? And of course, if you had ever asked him directly about it, he probably would have laughed that off. He probably would have said, "Well, my case comes up on Thursday or something," rather than saying, "Are you kidding? I would never do anything like that."
Yeah. Next question is, do you think there could be another Savile, or it was a byproduct of that era and the moral relativism that was the Benny Hill era, and now we're in the Me Too era?
I think they're everywhere, but they have to be much more careful. In fact, I think I watched some of your programs talking about what goes on, with the police protecting people and so forth. I really believe what that one chap whose name I can't remember has said repeatedly. So it's everywhere, but they've got to be more careful. I don't think he could have been as blatant as he was. I'm quite sure he wouldn't have been protected by the BBC the way he was, because they would know that with social media and everything, the secrets couldn't have been kept. And so they probably wouldn't have gone out of their way. But I think there's plenty of people still around like that who are up to that kind of behavior. But they're more careful. They are suiting their tactics to the digital age.
Yeah, because some of the cops that we have interviewed have said, because of the digital age, it's, the internet now is allowing these people to get access to young people through their devices. So it's caused an extension of it, because previously, they had to prowl the parks, playgrounds, schools, that kind of thing. But now the internet has just opened all of the doors. But I have just found an article that Ash has just sent me, an article from the Daily Mail, actually. It's titled, "I was Jimmy Savile's secret lover. The eccentric DJ's girlfriend of 43 years talks frankly of their very unconventional life together. Sue Hims and Savile recorded faithfully in her diary dated September 23rd, 1968. Saw Jimmy Savile at the hospital, met him again at 5:15. He gave me a lift to the bus stop in his taxi. Back then, she was a stunning, pretty 18-year-old on her way to a doctor's appointment at Leeds General Infirmary. When Savile, presenter of Top of the Pops, he was doing a shift as a volunteer porter at the hospital, part of his work there, and his first words he spoke to her were, now then. As chat-up lines go, that chance meeting led to a relationship was to last on and off right up until Savile's death in October, aged 84. A relationship she described as being as close as any marriage, yet which remained hidden from all but the star's dearest friends. So, do you think that was some kind of beard operation? Savile had a beard.
It could be that. Yeah, it could be that, or maybe she's a fantasist. Or there are these women that marry ex-murderers or something while they're still in prison that like to be close to notorious criminals for some peculiar reason. So there's all kinds of psychology. I'm sure Dr. Grandy could have a go with that one. But I think anything's possible. It's hard for me to imagine, that he would have a normal relationship of any length of time with a woman, given what he was up to, what anybody, close to him would know he was up to. I mean, what kind of relationship could that be? Maybe she approved. Who knows? Crazy.
Okay, so the next question that's come in: do we think the head trauma he received as a kid might have damaged his brain, and perhaps is psychopathy or the narcissism required here, is that connected to brain trauma?
I think that's quite a good question and quite a good possibility. I mean, we've known these cases in the past of people who've had an injury, Henry VIII being the most spectacular example, who've had a head injury and had their personalities transformed. So in his case, it happened early. I read some clinical research on this, where they said they looked at a large population of violent criminals in UK prisons. And they said a surprisingly large percentage of them had severe head trauma. Now, of course, if I were doing that research, I'd like to know, were they just really nice people before that, or not? But I think that's a real possibility worth looking into. Of course, it's a bit late to be asking the question, but I think there's some clinical basis for that. And of course, with what we're able to do now scientifically with scanners and stuff like that, we can see changes in brains, and we can see areas of those little two things in the front, whatever they call them, which, if they're glued together as bad news, might be some of that. So I think that's a good possibility.
Next question. Reports came out that he had assaulted over 60 staff and patients from various medical institutions. How do you get away with assaulting staff? Were they too scared to come forward?
Well, boy, that's a good question. In fact, again, I was thinking about this interview that Louis did, and he said he thinks the NHS is far more culpable than the BBC, and he said that they really enabled him. I mean, to the point where they gave him, living facilities at places and so forth. So again, he raised money. He was also probably quite a helpful guy. I mean, in his volunteering, they probably liked him. He was personable. He was witty. He was a celebrity. He had all these things going for him to get him in there. And of course, like the cunning rat that I like to compare him to, spotted and smelled the opportunity and went for it. So yeah.
So David, what other projects are you working on now?
Well, in fact, I just put one up on my channel today on a kind of a parallel question, which is England, does Britain really almost promote tax evasion and money laundering? And I see it as something like the same subject we're discussing here, in that if you're, important enough and rich enough and powerful enough, they leave you alone. One of the things that I cite in the video, which just went up today, on my Two Sides to Every Question channel, are the fact that when the Panama Papers came out, remember that big release of all of these people around the world that had hidden their money away in place in Panama, and somebody downloaded them all and sent them out to all the newspapers. Well, there were 6 members of the House of Lords that were on that list. Nothing ever happened, as far as I know. So in a way, protecting people with prominence, with positions of authority and power, it's quite similar to what we're talking about with Jimmy Savile. It's something we do in this country really more than we should. We should be tougher. We should ask tough questions. We should say, who do you think you are, rather than, do you know who I am? So it's kind of part of the same. It's the same excusing culture for prominent people. Bad news.
So in your research for that project, David, have you been looking at London as a hub? And, we hear about Russian oligarchs and all kinds of money getting laundered through London.
I'll tell you, the thing that really got me going on that a couple of years ago was an ITV documentary. And they talked about the enablers in London selling hugely expensive flats to cooks. They had a chap who was actually, I think, a Brit, but he disguised himself as Boris the Russian, with Natasha, his Russian girlfriend, and she wasn't even Russian either. And so they were looking at 25 and 50 million pound flats. and being told by the estate agent when he said, "Look, I have some money. I'm not too, I don't want to talk about too much." In every case, they said, "Oh, don't worry, we can take care of that." So there's a whole industry of kind of colluding people in London that help you with money laundering, tax evasion, all the rest of it, and it's something we put up with. We don't press this. We don't press this button very hard. We claim we do. I read that they have a thing, where any institution, any bank, even an art gallery, receives money from a very expensive item from somebody that's sort of dodgy, they are obliged to inform the government about it. Well, they do this by the tens of thousands because they know nobody will read them all. And so we're not serious about really rooting out this kind of thing. I hope we're more serious about rooting out child abuse, but it sounds to me like they're the same issue. So in that sense, I'm kind of a zealot.
Yeah, and without naming any names, then you have researched the church and its role in abuse, and what have been your findings there?
Well, of course, again, there were varying levels of revelation and then examination by country, which is an interesting example of the problem. The Australians were among the first really brave ones to really go after this, having a huge set of hearings and so forth in one of the states, I think it was New South Wales. And that's how the cardinal, whose name perhaps I shouldn't mention, who wound up in the Vatican, how he got caught and eventually jailed for a while. And the Americans then, when that thing happened in Boston, went after the church tooth and nail. And being America, of course, it was all about lawsuits, money, and so forth. And several dioceses were bankrupted. So the process went on. It took us a long time to get an examination of the subject here in Britain. And you may remember that each appointed chairman of the commission had to resign because they were in some ways appeared to be compromised or something. So we don't seem to have it in our blood. It's not in our DNA to pursue these kinds of things. Only if forced to, only if shamed into it. And I think that's what happened. That commission finally did come up with some good stuff, but by God, it took them a long time, longer than it should have.
Have you watched Sins of My Father?
Yes, remind me. I do.
It's about the priest. It's about the priest, and he has, I think, he had over 100 victims, and when it came about that he'd done something, the parents would go to the church, and the church would say, "Yeah, this is going to be stopped. He will be there's going to be some kind of legal action against him, and blah blah blah." And all they would do is move the guy 20, 30 miles away to a different parish. And he'd just do it over and over and over and over again. And the church knew he was doing it. So they were basically enabling him and insulating him from law enforcement.
It's an age-old and universal strategy of the church. And the whole idea was, number one, to avoid any kind of civil or state involvement investigating the crime, because that eventually leads to damages suits. That's the issue for them. It's always about money. And so they try always to kind of cover it up with no thought for the damaged lives. I mean, a lot of these kids in extreme cases not only are still shaking at age 45, some of them committed suicide. I mean, just a terrible, terrible thing. The church in that respect was really morally responsible and irresponsible. I think that's probably one of the things that the current Pope has really struggled over. It's so endemic, it's probably still going on, although to a lesser extent. And I think he's really been appalled by it. He's the first one that really has been. but the moving around business was almost a standard strategy. I think it happened in every country. It happened to huge effect in America. And of course, when you say the church, there were some levels in the church that spoke out against this, or they would refer the case to Rome and be told to be quiet and not pursue it. And in other cases, I know there were some kind of renegade, high-powered investigative priests. I read a couple of their books who said we can't go on like this. This is immoral and so forth. And again, they were shut down. They weren't damaged in any way. They were just told to shut up because, of course, it was not in their interest. I mean, who knows? Maybe the same thing was going on at the BBC.
So you say it's all about the money then. Now we've had a massive fall off. We've had a massive fall off in church attendance from when I was a kid to now here in the UK. So do you think that the church, this bad publicity from this kind of heinous behavior has got so big now on the church that to preserve itself, it has been forced finally to do something about it because there's a financial incentive?
Yes, that's true, and particularly with the Catholic Church, because they were the ones that have had the toughest time. The Church of England's had some of the same thing, just not as much. And who knows, probably other churches. I mean, you read about these televangelists in America; they all seem to be up to something. So that sort of thing is, you would think it's death on their moral stature. And so a lot of people I do know have left churches for that. I don't think we can ascribe all of the fall off to that issue because, of course, in the digital age, there are kind of secular movements of another sort going on anyway that are kind of competing with this. But I'm sure this is a big thing. I remember reading that after the big revelations in Ireland, the seminaries suddenly emptied. And of course, that's the end of the road when that happened to the church. They went from there was a big one in Dublin that trained a few hundred priests a year or something, and it went to none. So I guess the answer to your question is very often that has been the case. And in our acquaintance, we know a couple of people that have said, I finally had enough and I left. But we know others who are still devout, so there's a mixture.
And I have watched some researchers comment on that the church has moved its focus to other parts of the world where the growth is more consistent versus the West where it's declined, and the priests committing these crimes have been moved to these countries where there is much less scrutiny on that kind of depraved behavior. Have you heard anything like that?
Well, yeah, mostly I think you're talking about South America. I think that's where the popes keep going. I think that South America is viewed as the future simply because Western Europe has pretty much given up on the church. I mean, I have a place in Spain that I go to, and Spain is a very Catholic country. The churches are in, and Italy is much the same way. So Europe is disappearing as a market. America much stronger, but in decline. So they have to go to places where there's a growth opportunity. And I think South America is principally it. I suppose there are other aspects of Asia and so forth that offer some, but I think that's what it is. They have to go where the market is, really.
So do you think that this depraved behavior, what is the solution, David? How can we minimize or get rid of? Is it part of human nature? Is that there's always going to be corruption that's going to enable this kind of behavior and financial incentives and people trying to protect themselves? Or is there some kind of system that could be better established to prevent this in the future?
Well, the powers that be, for the most part, won't do anything about it. So the answer is in people like you and your channel and this kind of activity where a lot of people watch, they get what they view as the truth, and it's the same with journalists. So So people like us who write our books, you who publish your many videos, the people who are broadcasting, who running pressure organizations. All of these people are the future, and they've got to never give up. Be relentless. That's my advice to you, Sean.
Yeah, we have been relentless, and it's got us in a bit of trouble over the years. So we have to be. We're on eggshells. We're on eggshells these days with what we can and cannot say. But if people want to go over to my Rumble account, I have far more liberty in my phraseology over there. Right. I'm far removed from the algorithmic strangulation and fascist fact checking. Yes. So David, it's been a great pleasure. Love to pick your brains from time to time. You've done so much research over the years on these subjects. It's so important to humanity. Could you tell the viewers where they can find you, find your books, and support you?
You'll probably find a reference down in your video in the notes on your comments page, because I sent them to Ash, and that's the principal thing. Take a look at my YouTube channel, which is variously called 2 Sides to Every Question, or Yes or No in 5 minutes.
Yeah, so if you are watching this then, and you want to find David online, I'm just going to spell your name out for people, because some people are listening to this audio only. It's David, and then surname Sadtler. So yeah, huge thank you for coming on. Everybody in the chat has been very positive towards you, David. So wishing you all the best in your next endeavors. You take care, my friend.
Thank you, and keep up the good work.
All right, cheers. Thank you. All right, so that was guest number 1, Attwood Unleashed 55. Thank you very much for all the lively chat. I'm just going to have a look now and see what Ash is saying about our next segment. It looks like we've got Eric Hunley possibly joining us at 7 p.m. I hope so, because he's going to be on top of all of the subjects that are trending right now. Eric always puts a smile on my face as well. He's such a great guy. And Alec Baldwin is one of those subjects that Eric has been researching. There's breaking news. We've got the Julian Assange news from earlier today as well about, they're trying to send him to America to be sacrificed on the altar of truth. A journalist who's been 100% accurate in his reporting, now facing spending the rest of his life in an American federal prison system, which is absolutely disgusting, as I'm sure many of you agree. Then we've got the Johnny Depp court hearings being broadcast right now, and we've also got the Savile stuff. I wonder if Eric has done anything on the Savile stuff. All right, so I think Andrew might possibly be coming back in as well to discuss more about Depp and Savile and these other subjects. So please let me know in the chat how you're enjoying the Attwood Unleashed series. We've had massive cyber attacks today that we've not even divulged to you yet. I had to spend an hour on the phone with my internet service provider. They're the ones who alerted me to it. And they said these cyber attacks have been going on since March. So we are over the target when they're trying to shut us up one way or the other. And just 30 minutes before the show started this evening, someone tried to hack directly into my YouTube account, but we have got such tight security on the YouTube account, we managed to thwart that attack. But I've got multiple screens in here, and you may have noticed I'm particularly serious and vigilant today. I was in such a happy mood until all this Virgin contacted me, YouTube contacted me, all this happened just before tonight's broadcast. So there are definitely entities out there trying to shut this show down. Huge thank you to you guys for supporting it, and we will not let these bastards shut us down. We're going to keep going one way or the other. So Andrew, thanks for joining us, man.
Just realised my microphone was up in the air.
So Ash just said Eric Hunley might be coming on with some Alec Baldwin breaking news.
Honey boy. Yeah. So I was supposed to have him on for my podcast tomorrow. Now I'm doing him now. I'm going to have a boring conversation with him tomorrow night, aren't I? Because nothing left to talk about.
No, it'll be a different audience. It'll be a different audience.
Yeah. I know.
Every platform's got different audiences. Every channel's got different audiences.
Yeah, I know. I'll stop complaining, mate. Are you feeling? Are you feeling flustered? Are you a flustered man today?
Yeah, I had a nice walk in the sun. I went and bought some falafel and hummus and rice with sumac on it, and I was walking around in the sun. So looking forward to a relaxing evening on Attwood Unleashed, and then bam, email from bloody Virgin saying. Should I read this to the viewers? What's been going on here?
Come on.
Let's read it to the viewers.
Non-believers.
Virgin Media security alert. Denial of service attacks. Please read. Your home devices are at risk. We've been notified by a third party that the device on your home network has participated in a denial of service attack, which is where a computer system sends a large amount of traffic to another computer system or network with the aim of disrupting its connection to the internet. Because you remember when we got kicked off? Thank you for the super chat there, Rach, Joe. Really much appreciated.
Legend.
Remember we got kicked off and we were joking about it being hackers, and you thought perhaps it was I was getting a bit paranoid.
Yeah.
And I was thinking that perhaps I was getting a bit paranoid. I even went to bed thinking, am I being paranoid? But yeah, now they're confirming.
Sorry,
what? Have they got you?
They got me. Help!
I thought you'd been swatted. Then.
I'm trying to move my screen out of the way. Things aren't that easy. So let me continue to read this. So this is from Virgin. This is coming today. We don't know which device this is, but it does mean your personal data and online financial transactions are at risk. It's likely that the device connected to your broadband either has a security vulnerability that is allowing this traffic to pass through your home connection, or one of your devices is infected with malware, which probably isn't your fault. But it's important you get your devices fixed, so the malicious traffic stops as soon as possible. We'll help you to do this below. And then they go on to say, if you do not do this, we may need to suspend or cancel your broadband service. So they're threatening to cut my internet off if I do not address this situation. Virgin themselves. Oh my God.
Virgin themselves.
Oh my word. That is mad.
And then I looked at the instructions that I've got to follow to do this, and it is like reading something from an internet engineering degree course. I am clueless. So I spent an hour on the phone with them, and supposedly they got someone calling me back tomorrow to help me, to guide me through what I need to do to stop this.
Yeah.
Now that was just one notification we got. The other notification we got was 30 minutes before we went live from YouTube, saying that someone in Indonesia was attempting to take my whole YouTube channel. So we managed to stop that one quickly. Quick notification, quick stop, increased our security.
You know, I get rubbish about you on my channel. I get people commenting stuff all the time. Oh, what? You look at you and Attwood and all that about, you know. This is what happens when you got 700,000 subscribers, you know, and you're an eccentric man, and that's what it's about.
It attracts a campaign. I mean, we had 500,000 subscribers before this started to happen, but it only started to happen when we started to expose certain people around the world doing certain things to young people. And once you step into that domain, the campaigns commence against you through cyber attacks, through trying to destroy your reputation, through trolls, through black ops, through my account being terminated, YouTube terminated my channel twice, and on and on and on it has gone ever since we started to champion the human rights of survivors of these horrific crimes. There are entities, there are people out there who absolutely do not want us, reporting on those kind of things, and they've won really to the extent that we cannot report on this channel, but on my Rumble, find me on Rumble. There's plenty of stuff over there. On my Facebook page as well, we put a lot of stuff up there recently as well. So the creepy woman, the woman creeping around my property, Philip Green, no, didn't get to the bottom of that, no. All right, so Andrew,
Yeah.
what is this breaking news on Baldwin?
I don't know. Eric's going to come and
You
tell us
don't
about
know.
it.
Do I need to
Eric's
put Alec Baldwin into Google?
Oh, I don't know,
Oh,
mate.
wait.
Hang on, let's have a look.
Baldwin.
Oh, I love this show. Look, Eric's coming in like 5 minutes, so I thought we'd
Alec
wait
Baldwin
for him to
rust shooting. Ooh, it is. It's all headline news. Fatal movies.
Yeah. I've got a
Hunley
document
Hutchins' death
that I
caused
can-
by complete failure to follow safety rules. State authorities issue a willful, serious citation as they say established rules weren't followed on the set and that Miss Hutchins' death could have been avoided. A report into Alec Baldwin's fatal shooting on the set has found management knew that firearm safety procedures were not being followed. New Mexico workplace safety regulators have fined the film company a maximum $139,780,000, £107,000 after an avoidable loss of life occurred. They said it demonstrated plain indifference to employee safety by failing to review work practices and take corrective action. Cinematographer Hutchins died after a prop gun held by Baldwin was fired during rehearsals in October 2021. The actor was one of the film's producers as well as its star. Quote, our investigation found this tragic incident never would have happened if Rust Movie Productions, LLC, had followed national film industry standards of firearm safety, said James Kenney, the State Environment Cabinet Secretary. This is a complete failure of the employer to follow recognized national protocols that keep employees safe. And I heard a little beep there. Oh yeah, we've got Eric. Eric is about to enter the stream. Here we go.
I didn't know you guys were going early on it. I'm like, whatever. I wore a t-shirt for the occasion here. You got Johnny Depp, who's a pirate. There's issues with wife.
Eric, mate, you missed it. We did go early, and he caught me a bit off guard because he goes, Andrew, tell me about all that. And I went, oh my God, I don't know. Eric's coming in 5 minutes. Just wait for him. Wait for him. So we've been looking it all up online.
It's been madness, Eric. My internet cable provider sent me notification of some kind of mass attack on my internet, and then YouTube contacted me, and someone in Indonesia 30 minutes before we went live was trying to take over my YouTube channel. So yeah, they're trying to stop us from getting our voice out there on these subjects.
It's a tradition now, isn't it? Wow. It's like, what's the attack of the week here? Oh,
yeah,
man.
the attack was a denial of service attack, and my internet service provider is saying if I don't remedy it, they're going to stop my internet.
Wow.
That's helpful.
Yeah. You're like, how do I remedy? If I had a choice, I wouldn't be attacked. Maybe. It's like that's called victim shaming, right?
So if you're not familiar with Eric Hunley, he has a YouTube channel with a huge focus on crime. I urge people to go down and support what he's doing and subscribe. He has come on our channel multiple times talking about very important issues, but we also always have a blast as well. So, Eric, just want to tell the viewers, who are not familiar, a little bit about you and why you got interested in these dark subjects.
The dark subjects. Because I have no life. No. I'm just interested in different things. I started a channel to get a chance to talk to cool people like you and other authors, and it just sort of blew up from there. Like Baldwin, I backed into accidentally because I do a show called America's Untold Stories. And my partner, he's a writer in Hollywood, worked with Oliver Stone, people like that. And we were like, okay, we're going to do one show on Baldwin because it's interesting. And that's turned into like 20.
Wow.
So I'm sure you don't know anything about a subject that spirals out of control.
That's what it's about. And you've got several different channels as well. I like how you do it. You sort of streamline. Each channel's got a very specific theme and all of that. I think it's a really nice set of channels. So I'd recommend people do go and check it out. Check those out. So
what is the breaking news on Baldwin, Eric?
Okay, the Baldwin, I mean, this is literally just breaking like the last hour. The OHSB, or Occupational Safety Health Board of New Mexico, has come in with a conclusion and the largest fine that the state is authorized to give to a movie production of, I think it's like $137,000. I'd have to pull the exact report. Oh, 136,793. Sorry. That's the highest level citation maximum fine allowable. They have found that essentially that they had willfully ignored safety concerns on the set, and therefore they're giving that fine. Now, the fine itself is kind of a joke. No offense, but 137,000. It hurts them because they're a small production, sure. But what I see happening is all those lawsuits, the Hutchins lawsuit just got the biggest bullet they wanted, because in order to go after Baldwin personally, go after all the producers, go after everybody else, now they have an actual authoritative agency saying it's neglect. And this is in many ways, in my mind, I interview a ton of lawyers. I'm not a lawyer, so I could be completely wrong, but I speculate that this is even more beneficial than criminal charges going across, because criminal charges can lock somebody up, but then how are you going to get anything out of them when they're locked up or they're not able to do anything? This cites fault with the organization and all the producers, so you can start going after property. You can start to go after them because of willful neglect.
So where does the money go to? Does it to the family? Of the
well,
deceased
Hutchins.
get
Well,
the money?
okay. There's a bunch of cases. You have the bigger one is Matthew Hutchins, which is the widower and his son, and Helena's spouse. That's the big one. She died. Family. Child doesn't have a father or mother. Husband doesn't have a wife. So obvious case. Then you have Gloria Allred on the trail. Don't forget Gloria Allred. Gloria Allred is notorious. Famous for being a major Hollywood lawyer type, and she's not going to leave any nickels on the table, I promise you. She is currently representing the script supervisor, Mamie Mitchell, for stress, other conditions, and I think hearing damage from being in the scene when it happened. Then you have Serge. I don't know his last name. It was like he's the gaffer or the chief lighting guy. He actually had some of her hit him. He was right next to her, and when she got hit, it like splattered his glasses, and he held her when she died. Very tragic. They go back years. I think they worked together on like every past several movies. Just really, really close friends. So very, very sad on his part. I'm not trying to downplay his bed. Then you have the medic, and the medic is suing for occupational stress and whatever else, that she's unable to work right now due to that. Her case is kind of interesting. She's suing everybody but Baldwin, practically. So that's an odd one. And my theory on that is that she's suing under New Mexico auspices. And I think there's a limitation of whom she can actually sue. If too many outsiders are put into the lawsuit, then it's ineligible or something. So I think she's trying to keep it eligible. And Baldwin is a New Yorker, for example.
Presumably he's just paying her off, though.
With Baldwin, I don't even know with Baldwin. Baldwin, he makes so many, I feel, disastrous public relations choices that whatever. The guy he won't shut up. The smart one in the lot to me is Dave Halls, who ultimately was there and supposedly handed the gun to Baldwin, but he hasn't said a peep. You haven't seen him interviewed anywhere. You haven't seen anything. His lawyer sometimes talks. He's the only one who I think is literally competent in many ways. You have one more lawsuit, and this one's kind of a cross suit, though, and that is Hannah Gutierrez-Reed suing Seth Kinney. And Seth Kinney provides the armor and everything else. I am in contact with Seth Kinney. I've talked to him about the case, and we'll probably be getting a statement from him about this finding here. There's already a couple problems in it that they're being inaccurate. And it's one of those that it may seem like semantics, but technically, if you're going to state something, you better be correct. And they said that there were discharges, or I'm sorry, they said misfires. And technically, an accidental discharge is not a misfire. That is false. And I don't know if you know what the differences are. You guys are in England, so you may not have handled weapons very much. But an accidental discharge is just that. Like, I'm handling the gun and cleaning it, doing whatever, and then it goes off. That's an accidental discharge. I did not mean for that to happen. A misfire is I'm pointing at the target, I pull the trigger, and it goes pop, and it doesn't go out, or it blows up sideways or something else. That is a misfire. I intended to do this, and it did not have the result that I anticipated. So they are completely different if you think about intentionality and things like that. So to claim something as a misfire implies an intentionality versus an accidental discharge, which is an unintentional thing, completely different. For was it mens rea, I guess you'd say.
So one of the viewers, Patrick, has asked about Alex Baldwin's history of out of control temper and whether that has played a role in the chain of events that led to this tragedy.
There's some theories about that, like speculation that he could have been just sitting there saying, "Who are you, a cinematographer, telling me what to do instead of a director?" Because that is unusual in the chain of command. And it's like, okay, did you get that? Did you get that? Did you get that? Boom, something like that. I don't think, and I don't believe anybody thinks he actually thought that there was a real live round inside the gun. I'm going to put that out there completely. I could see him being aggravated and be like, whatever, and pulling it and not thinking about it. Or he claims that he didn't pull the trigger, which technically with that gun in working order, it is impossible to fire it without having the trigger pulled. So I'm going to get specific again. If the hammer is back, you have to pull the trigger to release for the hammer to go and the bullet to fire. Alternatively, if you are holding the trigger back and you pull the hammer and release it, it will go and fire again. So technically speaking, he could have been holding the trigger back and not pulled the trigger, because to pull the trigger is an action. I know, again, semantics, but that's really the only way that I could see it being true about the hammer pulling it back, releasing, and a bullet firing out of the weapon.
Yeah. We've got here from, what is that? I'm trying to make it bigger. It's Scott H, isn't it? Asking, guns don't shoot by themselves. And I think that's basically, Eric, what you've been saying for some time. Am I right in saying that, you posit that he jokingly sort of imagining that there was nothing in there, had a little.
There wasn't supposed to be anything in there. There are some really specific issues that I know about that I'll go into later sometime, but I can't. It's inside knowledge. But it was supposed to be dummied up. There's a term for it, dummied up, which is literally they're bullets, but they have no gunpowder and no primer, so they're just props. I mean, you take it, hit with hammer, whatever you want to do. It's just a bullet sitting there on the table with no actual gunpowder inside to cause it to fire. So yeah, technically it would be the same as holding an empty gun in his mind. I don't know about joking or otherwise, and I do understand the whole idea about never point a weapon at somebody. There's a lot of factors there. Actors do point guns at each other all the time. Okay, that is a fact. It's but there are safety protocols involved. There also is things like the video village was down because the camera crew quit that morning and walked off. Now, video village it's the cameras are all inside the tent. And so if he was pointing at the camera and things were normal, Helena would not have been inside the tent. She would have been over video village, which is kind of like, I don't know how to describe it, but like little monitors showing the different cameras. And she would be looking through that at that camera. And ironically, the lead camera person who quit, the gun would have been pointed at him possibly because he'd be the focus puller there at the time. First AD is the position. So that's another interesting angle and question about that.
Kimmy has said Baldwin had been around guns on sets numerous times. How did he suddenly lose that intelligence?
Again, he did not anticipate it. Who knows if he hasn't gone click and pointed at people 1,000 times before that. He isn't technically wrong when he said that it's a 1 in a trillion, incident. How many bullets have you seen fired in movies throughout time, all American movies, all time? There are 3 actual incidents total of guns. One of them is John Eric Hexum, who held a gun to his own head and it had a blank in it, but it was too close and he died. I'm not going to blame that on anyone except for John Eric Hexum. It's a tragedy. I'm not making light of it, but you can't blame that on anyone else that I know of. The second one is very famously Brandon Lee. That was a really freaky incident. That was a case of dummy rounds that were not done properly. Now, again, remember the dummies don't have any gunpowder and they don't have any primer. One of the methodologies for dummies is to drill a hole in the side to drain out the gunpowder. But they forgot to actually remove the primer or to pre-fire the primer. And because that was not done, when it was in the gun, there was just enough tightness around the edge of the bullet to get a seal. They pulled the trigger. The primer had just enough pressure with that to pop the round into the barrel. Then when they changed up and put a blank in there, the round was fired from the blank into Brandon Lee. So you could see the circumstances, how freakish that starts to be, it's like winning the world's worst lottery.
Yeah.
And then you have the Helena Hutchins, which there are a ton of problems with this. You have COVID protocols that we're not allowing the armor on the set. Why? I understand only, required personnel, but I would think an armorer is probably a required personnel if you're handling guns. But they didn't have her. So this leads to a lot of confusion. Why wasn't she there? Video Village. Should they even have been shooting? Should they have been rehearsing with a gun at the time? Again, I have a million questions.
There's a comment from Miguel Pancho 45. I imagine he would have it as his name. Baldwin cut out the Teamsters Union professionals to save money. It is not a surprise when you know the armourer was not a Teamster professional armourer. Is that part of it, Eric?
Okay. I'm not a Baldwin fan, but I will say that he was a producer, but he was a producer in name. There are different kinds of producers. There are the actual, I'm working on the damn movie producer, or I'm the actor whose name is going to go on this. And part of my contract is I get a piece of the movie later on and I get a producer credit. He's more of the latter. He was not an actual producer on set. So now he had say. Anytime you're an A-lister on the production, he does have say. But when you get into the weeds about the Teamsters and things like that, I would talk to Gabrielle Pickle more, who was the UPM or the line producer. And she hired and fired. She fired yelled at the crew. I'll call the police. She was the one who said, "Hey, you're doing double duties with the armorer and the props." So again, I don't want to give a Baldwin a pass. He's an ass. I'll just say that he acts like an ass. But I have trouble putting the production decisions on him specifically because that's kind of not his role.
So Belinda has said, how hard is it to check the chamber of a gun if you're the one holding it and it will be used?
It's technically it's not, but there are different different factors with that. He was handed a cold gun and a cold gun. He was told cold gun, here you go. And he went with that. The professionals. Now, I think people make a really solid point. If, let's say, he was doing deer hunter and he had to hold the gun to his head, maybe he would have checked it.
Yeah.
I know I probably would have.
Yeah,
I'm just saying.
I watched that the other day again for the first time in years. It's a great film.
Oh, yeah, it's hair raising, but I guarantee you, Bobby De Niro and Chris, I guarantee you they were checking the weapon. It's just something about that.
Yeah.
And maybe that's the ultimate protocol. Maybe that's the ultimate protocol. Every one of you, it's going to go to your head. Make sure.
Would they have been would they have been real guns then as well? Because they always, those old-fashioned ones, they looked a bit faker. Do you know what I mean? You just hear that sort of pow, and like a little bit of light comes out.
Well, I mean, they are blanks, and there are different degrees of blanks. That's something I've learned in this, because you have the full load blank, which is like very close to a bullet, and then you have lighter loads. Like if you're riding a horse, apparently they have to have like quarter load blanks, so they have a pop, but they're not as loud because that scares the horses, and the horses, you get thrown from a horse and killed. So there's different levels. I mean, there's actually a science to it. It's not just like a bunch of yahoos going around. It's very well structured. There's an art to it.
Yeah. 33K wants to know why the camera guy quit earlier that day.
Oh, Lane Looper and crew. Okay, they're back with Gabriel Pickle in the production department. The camera crew was pissed. They felt neglected. They were concerned about safety issues on the set because there were accidental discharges days prior. That comes up in the summary here. But they also were very pissed about hotel rooms. And that sounds really, really petty. Like, oh, I want a better hotel room. But keep in mind that they were filming in Santa Fe and their hotel room was like almost an hour away. And when they're the camera crew, they have to be like the first ones on. They've got to lay out all the equipment, put the cameras up, all this stuff. They're set up. Then they work a 12-hour day because they have to make sure that it's within a 12-hour day, or they'll have to pay the overtime. So then you got another hour tear downs. Now we're at closer to 14 hours potentially. And you add 2 more hours driving each way. Some of them were sleeping in their cars. And they were saying, this is BS because the other production people all were locally in a hotel. Now, that would be bad enough. But then it turns out that the production crew who had the hotels in town had special T-shirts made saying 404, hotel can't be found, mocking the camera crew who was bitching. So, and by the way, that kind of attitude is not. It lends an impression of how safety might have been considered on the set. That's almost like a frat boyish or frat type of a kind of juvenile response. So. Alec Baldwin technically was not required to point a gun in that scene, but he was preparing for a major scene, which is a complete shootout. That was the following scene.
Right. What happens next, Eric? What goes on, and what happens in Alec's career?
Well, Alec's doing 2 Christmas movies with his brother. He did a kind of a tiny movie in Your Way in January. Some airplane hijacking type of a movie. We are still waiting on the sheriff's report. That is ultimately what's next on this case. The forensics is with the FBI, waiting for that to be returned, and then waiting for the sheriff and DA's actual report. No charges have been filed as of yet, and we don't even know when that'll be. The DA, when she was interviewed, they did a puff piece on her. She was saying, it'll be months before anything.
Is OSHA investigating?
Well, I believe so, because this is the New Mexico OSHA that just came up with the fine.
Yeah. What's Agent Orange? There would have had to be some sort of safety protocol. I only had one incident where I almost shot around in a patrol vehicle. I was lucky enough to catch the mistake before firing the gun. Well, I think Eric, I think you've answered that as it was just such a fluke. It's only happened 3 times ever in history, and this was one of them. It's why it's such a big story, isn't it?
Oh, yes, for sure.
Yeah, if it only happened once, if it's happened, you know what I'm saying, if it happened all the time, it wouldn't be a story at all, but it's just this big one-off. But yeah.
Scott wants to know if any changes are going to come from this.
There already are some potential changes coming down, like people trying to put forth laws that you can't use real guns on sets and do it all CGI, things like that. I don't think it's necessarily going to work well, because the areas who are going to support that, well, guess what? They'll just film somewhere else anyway. So
we always debate this, Eric, don't we? This is where we get all debatey, because obviously my British sensibilities make me feel a bit like, oh, do we need guns and that? And then you understandably are on the other side of that. And I think, well, for movies, come on, CGI and all that stuff, surely that you have entire worlds now, like, Avatar was like 20 years ago and Harry Potter. Now entire worlds are built. So do we need the guns?
Yes. I mean, but here's a fact. They're starting to go back to more real stunts now because CGI is getting a little bit played out. I'm getting a little tired of superhero movies. How about you?
Yeah, I hate the superhero movies, but that's more about the script. I mean, it's not me going like, oh, if only they really shot Superman in the face, then I'd have loved that film. If only it was a real gun in Superman.
Oh, I don't know. Superman can be annoying. I'm just saying.
Yeah, if only Spider-Man really had webs coming out of his head. I'm not that bothered about the CGI. I'm bored of the films. I'm bored of, the storylines of superhero movies.
So Dyfun wants to know more about the woman who was shot, her connections and future intentions.
America's Untold Stories, the Baldwin Rust Tragedy, Episode 3.
So, Eric, we've got all these other subjects trending right now. We've got a lot of other true crime subjects trending right now. There's Julian Assange news today. There's the Savile documentary that's come out. Ash has said that the Will Smith divorce. Have you got expertise on any of these other subjects you'd like to talk about?
Well, hottest thing right now is probably the Johnny Depp trial.
Johnny Depp, that was the one I meant to say as well. Yeah, talk to us about Johnny Depp, please.
Well, he's been on the stand now. This is his second day, and it's plaintiff testimony. So right now, it's his story going out. Just before lunch, he got into the cut off finger, and there's questions about it. Like, okay, he's saying that it was a vodka bottle she threw at him, and that cut his finger off. Cut the tip off. When he went to the hospital, he said it got caught in a door. His doctor Kipper said that it was a knife. And there were questions, okay, obviously the defense is saying, see, look, he didn't even say it was her. And then they're putting the case forth that he's an abused spouse. Right next to that was a more interesting and kind of creepy thing of he had a burn on his face here. It was actually a cigarette burn. And his claim is that after the bottle, she was like, Pierce, and put out a cigarette on his face, which to me is incredibly problematic. I know it'll sound weird when I say that the bottle accidents happen. It could have been rough. They could have been throwing things or whatever. That could have been more in the accidental. But putting a cigarette on somebody's face is extremely intentional and does lend into the abuse. Like, I really want to hear her answer about that. As far as the finger goes, here, surprise. Get the camera right. I've actually lost the tip of my finger. It's not that uncommon.
How did you do it?
When I was 10, I was playing on a device that had a pulley and a steel cable, and I was falling, grabbed hold of the cable, and it went up in the pulley, and it got crushed off. So they couldn't really.
Oh,
but there's a million. There's people who use bandsaws. There's there are a lot of people who do lose a digit, and it's nobody meant to do it or anything. It's obviously a bummer, but. And I'm not downplaying it. If, there was a violent situation, it's bad, but I'm just saying that it can happen.
So I've got two observations on what you just said then. So if someone throws a bottle at somebody, would that typically, is a bottle, the shape of a bottle? How's that going to cut a tip off? Wouldn't someone have to smash a bottle on a table and have it all jagged and plunge it into your finger to get that off? Yeah. And the other thing is, if someone's going to hospital after domestic, wouldn't they try and cover up for the partner anyway? Doesn't that
exactly?
Really
that does make sense. Now, I understand it's a vodka bottle. Don't know that if it was a square shape, whatever. Didn't get the exact circumstance. But if you're like at a post, like let's say you're ducking and somebody throws a bottle at you, and it shatters on the post and your hand is, like right around that, the broken bottle could continue and have that pretty severe cut. I'm just saying. That would be one way I could see it, happening, especially, like a finger being caught out there. And it was his right hand, his dominant hand. So he could have been like,
yeah.
What do you think about the way he's delivering his testimony in this very slow, measured speech, and he's erming and ahhing a lot?
Oh God, you want to get everybody to hate my channel and unsubscribe? No, I'm just kidding. I think that he was very compelling the first day, to a degree. Today I felt like he was equivocating quite a lot, and that was making me a little crazy. Little things like when he said, he was asked, "Why did you stay with her?" And he was going on and on and on, and went in, kind of the same stuff he said yesterday, that he was in Hollywood, and people think of this, and he'll be in the headline, he's doing that, and just as meandering it, and I'm like, answer the question. And finally, and I swear it might have been 5 minutes of that. I'm not kidding. And then he said, I didn't want to quit on her. I didn't want to quit on that. It was harmful when my mother, when my father left. And I'm like, there you go. Start right there. All that other stuff, just start right there. That's a good answer. And that's making me a little bit crazy, because I do a lot of, I'm with all these behavioral analysis people and things like that. And there's something called chaff and redirect. And I always get a little trouble when we go on, and is statement analysis, when I'm like, okay, you were at the bank robbery, so what happened? Well, I decided to sleep in a little bit, and I was running late, and so I got behind, and geez, I was driving to work, and I noticed that I was low on gas, and I was like, dang. So I got my gas, and I was like, oh, hell with it, though. I'm not gonna make it through the day without my coffee. And so I ran in and I got the coffee, and was there a restroom that day? And by the way, at 10 a.m. is when the robbery took place. And we're sitting at 8 a.m. We're going through everything on the path. That is a problematic thing when you're talking about statement analysis or whatever. Why do you have all this? Now, Sean, I know you've been around some deceptive people, and you probably know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, Matt Cox was a classic. Have you watched any of Matt Cox's stuff on YouTube? He was the con man who did the biggest mortgage fraud in the history of America, and he's very charismatic.
I want him on my show.
You should get Matt Cox on your show. He's an exceptional speaker. People really like to watch him. He's so engaging. All right, well, just going back to Andrew's theory from earlier in the day then. So Andrew's got a theory that the story of Johnny coming home and the boots getting put on, and the day he came home and he took the boots off himself. Andrew's theory is that this is a strategy by Depp to build her portrait of a psychopath here.
A cultish being. Yeah. A control. It's a control mechanism, and I can see that. You're talking about yesterday's testimony. There's one part of yesterday's testimony that I noticed, and I did tell somebody at the behavior panel, but I haven't talked to anybody else just to see if anybody noticed it. But when he was asked about Whitney, now I encourage everybody to go back and watch his reactions when he was asked about Whitney.
Is that the sister?
Yes. There's something there. There's something very weird there. And I'll back up and not say that there's a relationship there of, it's not salacious. Okay. I don't think it is that. But the way he reacted about it and really kind of went bonkers off the baseline and was checking at Amber, and she kind of had a death look on her face. And then that's when the cocaine finally got admitted, because the defense kept asking cocaine. Every single witness, cocaine. It's like, why are you harping about cocaine? Nobody's saying cocaine.
Don't get Sean's channel taken down.
Well, they said, did you do drugs with Whitney? He said, yes, I did cocaine. So we're like, okay, well, that is the element that we're looking for, the C word.
Sean and I, we were wondering before, though, because that is him in court saying he did an illegal thing. And I'm not somebody who judges
Sure.
people for doing those things. But does that get him in any trouble?
He would have been in trouble if he
limitations.
denied it, wouldn't he? Because it would have been perjury.
Right,
You
and
can't
statute of
prove he did
limitations.
it.
Well, I mean, statute of limitations.
Yes.
We're talking about 6 years ago, dude.
Is that?
And
so
he
then
did
it doesn't
it.
matter.
He's exempt.
Well, I mean, it's kind of hard. It's like, who is going to go prosecute him? By the time you get it through, you're going to get past a certain point. And also, he's not testifying to that. It's like something completely different. He's not under charges for it. Like, did you do cocaine? And here's the charge. He's talking about something else.
I've got him in the
So
corner
what's
of
it hurt?
my screen, just looking all confused at the moment with his little face, with his little beard and everything.
He kind of, I mean, I don't know. He does that. I do think I think he is a victim. And I think it's possible with Whitney. Like, I think there's a special relationship between the two of them, or there was. And I wonder if they might both be victims. And that's just kind of what popped into my head.
So when I saw him squirm like that, I thought they were going to ask if he had a relationship with her. But then when he came out about the cocaine, I thought, wow, this is a big deal, him admitting about the cocaine. And perhaps he was going through some pre-anxiety of being about to say that.
Isn't it also like, look, I'm being honest about this and I shouldn't be, but, you know, look how honest I am about the drug. So I must be being honest about all the other stuff.
It could be, and I agree with you, Sean, on that. I'm adding more on the Whitney side because leading up to it, he kind of was painting a narrative over how Whitney's a little bit lost. Whitney, I don't know if you saw all that, but remember how you're saying she just isn't confident like her sister? He has like this kind of protective vibe going there.
Has she spoken? Not yet.
Not yet. And she might well be for the defense. I don't, I think it's very possible she'll say that Johnny Depp is a monster. Johnny Depp introduced me to the C word. For all I know,
Yeah.
I can't speak to that yet. It's a problem. The whole thing.
By virtue of the fact that he's instigated this suit, does that mean then he genuinely believes in his innocence, or do you think he's so Machiavellian that he's done it and he's had years to rehearse a script that he's forthcoming with now?
No, I think he was actually a victim, and I don't think he's going to prove defamation though. It's a weird scenario because this is an abuse case in the disguise of defamation. But the actual charge is defamation. And the problem that I keep coming back to is it sounds like mutual abuse. It sounds like they may have gone at each other. One of the therapist's testimony that really keeps sticking in my head is she gave as good as she got. And that's a really bad tone. Now, people have said, no, Eric, that doesn't mean violence. I'm like, yeah, well, it always has everywhere I've been. So to me, in my life experience and what I've heard, it just kind of is like, yeah, he gave as good as he got. I was like, he got punched in the face 2 times, but he got a little bit back in. Sorry, but and that could just be my background. Maybe I'm more redneck or something else. But that's a problem. I think that Johnny Depp had to do this suit though, because his career is garbage. It's over. This is not to me about winning against Amber Heard. I think this is about getting the story out there in response to the Washington Post letter that lost him all of his work. So people can watch this whole thing, see the results, no matter what happens, and say, you know what? I'm going to hire him because I believe him. And they have enough of a reason to go ahead and hire him. If he did not do this, then he would just be forever an abuser.
Yeah. He wants to control the narrative a bit. Go on, Sean.
Do the couple have documented drug abuse history? And if so, could they have just been out of their minds on substances, attacking each other?
Oh, he definitely he's drug addict. I mean, he's said it. He's going through it there. Look, a friend of mine said that essentially you're talking about 2 barflies here. You're talking about 2 drunks, 2 addicts just probably beating each other up. I hate to break it down really, really simplistically, but it kind of is.
That's what I was suspecting myself. Exactly.
It's easy for us to imagine it because he's played that role. I mean, if you think of Blow, it was him and Penelope Cruz. They were going at each other pretty hard like that as well.
Well, I mean, his hero was Hunter S. Thompson, for God's sake. Hunter S. Thompson was not just an addict. He was a celebrated addict. I mean, he was a dedicated addict. He did it all the way to the end and took a bullet himself. Because he was never going to quit any substance or anything else. I mean, it was literally part of his entire identity how much he could consume of illegal, illicit, or alcoholic substances. That's a fact. His books, he's celebrated. He's like, one of those figures. And Johnny Depp, worshipped him.
Yeah. He wrote a beautiful poem, Suicide Note, Hunter S. Thompson.
Yeah, charming, isn't it? When you think about the overall, that's dark. It's really some dark stuff. But you like Elliott Smith too.
Yeah, no, I like the dark stuff.
Speaking of dark stuff, Eric, have you had a chance to watch the Netflix Savile documentary?
I have not. I don't really know much about it other than supposedly he was a very bad dude that did very bad things.
Was that big news in America when it came out 10 years ago? Like the allegation, or not the allegations, but what he did and everything.
He's not really a big name here. I don't. It's kind of and we have so many weirdos of our own.
What I noticed is when I moved to America, some of the biggest celebrities in the UK, they never ever translate over to America, and Americans have no clue who they are, and vice versa.
Was it Gary Glitter's like that? Like we kind of hear about it, but nobody cares. It's not really one of ours.
We used
and
to call it
it's so minor. That was it. Rock and Roll Part 2 was still at all the football games. They played at sporting events. And I guarantee if he was an American, that would be pulled down.
Yeah, he was in the Spice Girls movie as well. One of his songs,
and the leader,
and it was a very suggestive song as well. It used to be called Breaking America, didn't it? We used to talk about it a lot in the 90s because I guess obviously the big bands like the Beatles and that all broke America, so to speak. They got big in America, and then there was a big sort of patch in the 80s where it didn't happen until the Spice Girls did, and everyone was like, oh, Robbie Williams didn't really make it over there in a big way back in the 90s. Perhaps also because of the name Robin Williams was quite confusing. But
we also had a reverse one though. Nirvana built their name in England and were imported back.
Yeah,
so there's some weird stuff too. Hendrix, same thing. I mean, that was in the 60s, but he literally made it in England and got imported.
Yeah.
We've got a few minutes left, and Ash has asked us to ask you, Eric, your thoughts on a Will Smith divorce.
I don't know. I mean, I think that's if not abused, it's a pretty sadly cuckolded, embarrassed husband. I feel sorry. I feel pity for the guy in a lot of ways. A divorce, I'm sure it'll be ugly. But I see the second video of her talking to him. And he's like, can you turn that off? I'm in my house and things. And just her absolute contempt. I mean, if you've done the body language and expressions, you see that contempt, and it just flows. She has zero or less than zero regard for him. He is nothing more than a freaking paycheck or furniture from what I've seen, or in my opinion. See, I hang out with lawyers.
That's just, it's a hard one, isn't it? Because we do watch, and I know like you've got a lot of the behavioral stuff going on, and sometimes it's, I think that's spot on, and other times I think but if you catch anyone like in a bad moment, the bad face, and those kind of videos, I mean, if you're a couple who's married with kids and you've been together for decades, there are going to be moments where one of them's like filming the other one and the other one's going, oh, get away from me,
I agree to the point of this. She didn't stop filming, did she? And then she made sure to release it. No. And then she released it for the world.
Yeah, that's the difference.
So let's follow up. Okay. Yeah, you're aggravating. Stop it. Turn that off. I'm not in the mood. Yeah. I'm not in the mood. Okay, we're fine. Do I then go put it on Instagram with a couple million people to say, look what I just did to my husband? No, I don't do that. So therein lies the difference. So I agree. I'm going to have a bad moment. I'm going to be shitty and say something shitty to my wife accidentally or intentionally and regret it later. She would probably do the same thing. But you know what? We don't sit there and then go, "Hey, let's document it and make sure everybody knows."
Right. Huge thank you for coming on at such short notice, Eric.
Sure.
Can you tell the viewers where they can find you on socials and YouTube?
Hunley Eric on just about everything, Twitter, etc. I know Ash has been putting my show links in there, erichunley.com, but you just search Eric Hunley, you'll find me.
Oh, huge thanks again. You have a good rest of your day. Cheers. Take care.
Cheers, Eric. See you tomorrow.
Bye.
See you.
Bye.
Got Eric coming on my show tomorrow.
Fantastic. And if you want to check that out, you can go over to Andrew Gold's channel. His links are always in our description boxes on our videos these days.
On the edge with Andrew Gold.
Yeah, on the edge of Andrew Gold. And I'm about to bring in Darren.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to go for that. So.
All right, you get a rest, man.
See you, mate. See you in a bit.
See you in a bit. Cheers. Adios. Hey, Darren, how's it going, brother?
Hi, Sean. You all right, mate?
Yeah, doing fantastic. Pity you missed our raving night at Fabric, but we will definitely get to rave together at some point, I'm hoping, in the coming year.
Oh, definitely. The one in September sounds good.
Yeah. And also, I told the viewers at the very beginning of this broadcast, if they're not familiar with you, to go and check out the podcast we did.
Yeah.
And, you've got some serious medical situations now as a result of abuse and the things that you've been through. But many of the viewers now who are watching us on all these different platforms, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, are not familiar with your story, Darren. So we've only got about 20 minutes. Could you just narrow it down and let them know, what happened in your life and how that started?
Yeah. So my name's Darren. I'm now 52, and my abuse started for me when I was about 8. That's when it kind of started on, and I was heavily sexually abused in a mixed approved school in Bath.
Oh, Darren, sorry, I've got to stop you for 1 minute because the police now require me to ask you to confirm that you waive your anonymity because of the nature of what we're talking about.
Yes, I do. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. All right, yeah, keep going.
Yeah, same as last time. Yeah, and I was heavily sexually abused whilst in the approved school and also outside of the approved school as well. And I was abused when I was at school, in like normal school, for a couple of years, and which led to me going to court for truancy and telling the judge in Bristol Juvenile Court at the time of what happened. The only thing I did wrong was I told the truth, and it got me an approved school order where, if my life before the approved school wasn't hell, I surely was about to go into hell and witness hell firsthand. And then, with going through all the sexual abuse under the hands of two lovely gentlemen, but one by the name of
let's not name any names because of the legal situations.
Yeah, sorry.
But these were the people who were supposed to be helping you.
Yeah, and no, they helped themselves. They didn't help us or all my friends or nothing like that at all. No one helps us. They that's why I'm like I am now. That's why I'm going through medical stuff now, because as a result of that and my life after, I was trying to rebuild it and it just didn't happen.
So let me just tell the viewers then, Darren has detailed what he went through in that first podcast we did, which is called Let Down by Social Services. If you want to check that out, it's a multi-hour podcast. So just to jump ahead in the story then, Darren, how did you get out of the situation? How did the abuse end?
The last time I got raped, I was 18, just turned 18. And that was the end of my supervision order with the courts. And I knew from that moment, you know, after the last time of being raped, I think I was about 18 and a half, and I knew that after that I'd never let anybody hurt me again. You know, and yeah, it was an order I had. Basically, you had your approved school order. Then when you come out of the approved school, you were given a supervision order under, back then, the old probation in Bristol. And that was the last time I was sexually abused. So.
And when you made that decision, Darren, did people try to continue the abuse? And what happened if they did?
Well, yeah, a lot of people try doing the abuse, but in on a mental and physical thing with your brain, and I had to meet him with violence. I had no choice. Nothing I was proud of. Don't big up nothing. I got myself heavily involved after the approved school in crime. I just had no trust. I didn't trust anybody. I didn't want anybody around me at the time. Well, until I hit 50, I couldn't trust anybody. Met my partner, and I fell into crime. I really, you know, no, I had no family support, nothing, no one. I was alone, you know, Lone Ranger. I was on my own. I had absolutely nothing. Crime was my only support. And, you know, people that you meet in the criminal world that become your friends. And no, I had nothing, no one. I was on my own, even in my prison years and stuff.
Yeah, because Scott, one of the viewers, Scott, has just asked that, you know, throughout all these years, did you have any family support?
No, I had no family support whatsoever. I was never close to my family. Never have been, never will be. You know, I had no support whatsoever. Just come from a broken home. I come from a bad broken home. You know, it wasn't great. And I you know, put it this way, you know, I've seen stray dogs had a better life than what I did. And I had to make good of what I had, and it was nothing, literally nothing. You know, I've spent a long time as well being homeless. You know, done a good few years on the road being homeless. And no, you know, yeah, thank you. Somebody remembers the podcast.
Let me just read what Nikki said, because this is, you know, it was almost unanimous, the comments coming in on all your podcasts, all the comments, just people's hearts were broken hearing what you've been through. And this comment here from Nikki Stedman is just typical of the thousands of comments that have come in for you, Darren. Nikki says, I remember your podcast. You are a brave man. I really feel for you. Can't believe there are people out there that would do such things to kids. It's heartbreaking. Stay strong, be good and proud. And Darren, you know, telling your story for the first time and all these comments coming in, how has that impacted your life?
Is what it, you know, it made me become a better person. It made me believe in me. You know, when people start believing in you and, you know, you feel that you've made an impact on someone else. It was at that time, literally after meeting your good self, Sean, that I could finally stop about committing suicide. I could finally stop that. You know, I never had to leave the world prematurely, because that was all I could think about, because I just wasn't happy. Because
Darren, how close had you been to committing suicide?
I've got it on the medical record. I think I've had over 15 attempts on my life. From strength, the last time I tried to commit suicide was the year I met you, year before last. That was on the 2nd of May. I tried hanging myself. Just had enough. I was living in a bad place. I was in a bad place, and just put a rope around my neck, and just couldn't take it. You know, I had loads of attempts on my life. Tried overdosing, hanging myself. I tried it in a tree. I swung, and I didn't realize somebody was watching me. And as I swung, they grabbed me legs.
My God.
You know, it's just what happens. It's because your head's in such a mess with the abuse in your life afterwards, and trust. I couldn't trust anybody. You know, to me, trust was a horrible, vile word. I just couldn't trust no one, Sean. You know, you got so much going on, and you're so deep, and the people that were involved with the abuse that you see on a weekly basis, and it drove me insane. You know,
Darren, what measures are in place in your life now? If these feelings arose again, whereby you felt like you were going to end your life, what safety measures are in your life now to prevent that from happening?
I'm not on any antidepressants, but what I've got now in my life is someone who I believe in, who I trust in, who I absolutely love, and that's my partner. If I get a suicidal thought, I can talk to my partner, and she'll ask me why I'm feeling. You know, it's not happened for a long time now. She'll ask me why, what led to it, what's going through my head, and we can talk, and we talk. She allows me to talk. She lets me get all the stuff off if I'm feeling pressed, and you know, is listening, is having someone to listen to. It really, really is. You're not alone, because when you're alone with the thoughts, it's horrible, because you got nowhere to vent them, have you? You know, you got literally nowhere to vent the thoughts, and having, you know, my partner Kelly in my life, that's why I'm here. That's why we're talking. You know,
God bless you and your partner. That's you know, such a positive thing to hear from such darkness that you've emerged into such a strong relationship now, and that's your safety net.
Yeah, and you know, she saved my life. She saved my life on a few times. You know, and when I wanted to go, and you know, I was tired and I was beat from everything, and you know, she kind of told me that there was hope beyond the rope, and that I didn't have to, you know, it wasn't my time of journey to do yet. And you know, you're helping people, and I could never see that, you know, just through speech, just through someone like yourself giving me the opportunity to reach out, to tell my side, to what I've been through, you know. And yeah, it really does help. You know,
beautiful comment from Medi there. She is your soulmate.
Oh, you know, she really is my soulmate. She really, really is. I've never, you know, I get scared because I kind of think, wow, is this really real? Is this happening in my life now? Have I really got this sort of support? You know, the network of friends. You know, I do get scared.
Darren, we've got about 5 minutes or so left. Are you okay to tell the viewers the nature of your health situation and what you're doing to address it?
Right. So at the present moment, I've got 6 ulcers, 2 hernias, 3 leaking heart valves. I've got ongoing problems from the back passage from the abuse, and I've got a blood problem. I went today to have a myoview on the heart. I had a big 2.5 hour medical today, so they scanned the heart, and I won't know yet of what's happening with it. I've had it now for 2 years. With leaking heart valves, you're given up to 5 years. So I've got about 3 years left before it's too late. And but what I want to do is we had to change the date. So on the 2nd of July this year, in just over 2 months' time, myself, Kelly, and the dog are going to walk from Trafalgar Square to George Square in Scotland to raise money for the operation, because I've got no faith in the National Health Service, because I've just got over 2 bouts of internal bleeding. I've had 2 operations in the last 2 months to sew up the insides. So I need to get this operation done pretty quick. So we're going to set up a proper page on my page. We tried it before, and I think it was just, I had too much going on, because after the last video with yourself, I was back in hospital again. So I'm going to walk from Trafalgar Square on the 2nd of July to George Square in Glasgow to try and raise money for the operation. And with whatever's left, I want to put into a couple of charities to help other charities for, like, you know, depression and, you know, whatever else needs doing.
How much is the operation, Darren?
We need to get up about 20,000. So it's a lot of money, but by walking and doing the walk myself with Cal and the dog, we can raise awareness for mental health, people that are going through things in their life, and get the money up for the operation. But via my page, by the weekend, I'll have it properly set up. You know, it's just been a bit of a roller coaster at the moment, because I've had the appointment cancelled 11 times. So I just need to get it done now, and just get my life back, Sean.
So you're going to have a donation link set up for this?
Yeah, I'll have it done by the weekend. And if it's okay with you, I'll check in with you quite a bit to let you know the progress and where I'm going.
Absolutely.
Let our viewers know what's happening and where to go.
Definitely.
But, I hope you said about helping me with the camera work on the road when I'm walking, if you could.
Yeah, James, the cameraman, is up to getting involved in some of it. Yep, definitely.
Brilliant. If you could help us with like the start and with a GoPro that when I go.
Oh, we've got GoPros. If you want to use our GoPros,
they're and I can log in with you every day. Then do a live satellite and where I am, how it's been. But that's it. But if people kind of look at my other videos with your good self, Sean, they'll understand where I've come from and where I am now.
Yeah, and John Wedger, I think John Wedger introduced you to us, didn't he?
Yeah.
Is John Wedger part of the plan that you've got to raise the money now? Is he helping?
Yes, John. He's been a bit busy himself at the moment, but he's going to come on the walk with me for so far. He's going to start off the walk. And hopefully he's going to meet us in Glasgow to finish the walk as well. But I have spoken to John, and I got to speak to him again this week. But he's a busy man at the moment. He really is a busy man. And yeah, it was John. Well, saved my life. He's a good guy, and I respect him. He's busy, but he's a good guy. He really is.
He sacrificed so much to help people. He's an absolute saint, isn't he?
He certainly is. He's a legend. Ledge to wedge.
Yeah.
He's really a good guy, and you all are. You're all brilliant, and I respect every one of you of what you do. So, and that's why I'm glad for this opportunity tonight, Sean. Thank you.
Really appreciate it, man. So you have a great rest of your day then, and keep us posted and send the link over when you've got the donation link.
I will do, mate. Brilliant. Thanks ever so much, Sean, and thanks everybody for tuning in.
Thank you, Darren. Take care.
Cheers, mate. Bye.
Cheers, brother. Bye-bye. What an amazing, brave soul. And thank you for tuning in to AU55 this evening on YouTube. In about 10 minutes, we will be live on Patreon. The Patreon link is in the description box below the video. We're going to be going over to Kincora Boys Home. And then we're going to be talking about Putin over on Patreon. So if you want to join us over there, huge shout out and thank you to the Patreons. Thank you to the moderators. Thank you to Ash for organising these live streams and all of your guest suggestions. We did the poll on the debate. The leading debate was that the viewers wanted was the Savile is a monster versus the guy who thinks Savile is innocent. That we're not endorsing that viewpoint, but we are willing to have this guy on in a debate because you guys have voted for it. There are several other debates we got lined up as well. Fake moon landings versus real moon landings, JFK conspiracy versus lone gunman, etc. So this is what's coming up on all the show, the coming Attwood Unleashed. And if you are listening to this on iTunes now, Spotify, as of Attwood Unleashed 54, this podcast is now available worldwide on all of the audio platforms as well as YouTube. So huge thank you for tuning in, everyone. Maybe we'll see some of you on Patreon. And next podcast is coming out Sunday night at 6 p.m. is actually our next podcast. So take care out there, wherever you are in the world. Down with the hackers. Cheers. Take care. Thanks. Bye-bye.